Okay, thank you, Srinivas. Okay, good morning. Welcome to lecture number 41. Yeah, so in the last lecture, we were looking at this Max-Flow-Mincutt theorem. It states that value of maximum flow in a flow network, where C is the capacity, is equal to minimum capacity of an S2T cut. Okay. So the main idea behind the proof is the notion of augmenting paths. Okay. So we constructed the residual network of a graph. Okay. So basically, we assume that the graph is such a way that we don't have, so between a pair of vertices, both edges in both directions. So only one direction edges are allowed. Then we get a residual network where there could also be backward edges, or in the sense there could be an edge from A to B as well as B to A. Then so we were seeing that so any S to T path, so we call it as an augmenting path. Such an augmenting path, in fact, can be used to update the flow, where we get a larger flow of strictly larger value. Okay, so this is the example of an augmenting path. Okay. Yeah, so one of you was asking about intuition. So the intuition behind this. So at least see, like I said, I'm not an inventor of this, nor this. I mean, the only time I have seen this algorithm is when preparing for the lecture. So from what I understand, uh, yeah. So for your information, this is the first time I'm teaching an algorithms course or doing a serious algorithms course ever. Okay, so I have a background in completely different area, though related. Okay, so yeah, so here the intuition is, at least as far as I understand it, is edges. So edges in the forward direction in the residual graph, they represent what more can be added to the flow. Okay, or if you are thinking of these as representing road traffic, you can add, say in this case, so the original, okay, so this is already augmented. Okay, so I don't know if I have the image. Let's see. This is from yesterday's lecture. Okay, so yeah, so here the allotted flow is 10, but the capacity is 20. So this edge indicates I can add a flow of 10, but if I don't want it, so in the rerouting process, it's better not to allocate any flow. I can deduct at most 10. The reverse edge of weight 10 basically says I can reroute the flow, or I can take out the flow from there. Okay, that edge.
Hello,
That's
sir. But
essentially, yeah.
since you are saying rerouting, I'm asking this. It is the
Yeah.
residual, what we are sending it in the residual graph is the residue, right? It is the 10 is because of the residue from
Yes.
S to the other vertex.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
it's called rerouting the flow. Okay. So your flow, if you're thinking this as a routing process, so it's basically rerouting the flow. Okay. You're taking out the flow. So that means you're reducing the flow in that. So if you're imagining this as traffic, right? So you're basically, you have to reroute the traffic elsewhere. Because in the end, we are going to get a flow assignment which is better than the existing one, right? Yeah, so I didn't really understand your question. So what was your question?
sir, you were saying rerouting, so I'm
Yeah.
not understanding the rerouting part. We are in the original graph, there is an edge
Yes.
going from S to the other vertex with uh, flow 10, but in this
Mm-hmm.
graph, we just reversed it. Is it the reason you are saying it rerouting?
Yeah, that is rerouting, right? So when if I have allotted flow of 10, right? Allotted traffic of 10, whatever. Now, if I'm taking it away, if I'm reducing it, that's basically rerouting. That amount I have to
But we are
reroute
sending the
elsewhere.
residual amount.
It's a notation. I mean, I don't know what is the difference.
Okay,
I
okay, sir.
don't
Okay, sir. Okay,
understand.
sir. Please go on. I think I'm getting confused unnecessarily.
I mean, no, you're worried about the terminology, or
Like,
This seems to be like worrying about the terminology. You're
no,
worried
I'm
about
not. I'm
residue.
not. Like, I'm worried about this part. Like, what is the intuition? Why this works? Because it needs to have some intuition, right? So I was thinking there should be some intuition behind constructing this residual graph and then going to the
No, the
augmented graph.
intuition is like taking away the flow, right?
Okay,
So
okay,
I
sorry.
would use the term reroute. That's what it
Okay,
is.
okay.
Yeah,
Please go on.
yeah. So I mean, see, like I said, I am not completely clear about the intuition as such. Like I said, I haven't taught it more than once. This is the first time I'm teaching. So this is what I understand from the definition. That's all. Okay, nothing more than that. Because it's in fact one of the groundbreaking results. It's treated as one of the groundbreaking results in algorithms. In fact, flow networks. Okay. So the construct of the residual graph itself, right? It looks very counterintuitive to one a layman or someone who is beginning. So at least from the explanations what I have seen, it's called rerouting. Okay, some people, I mean, it could be different terminology or whatever. So the residue, yes, residue is also right terminology. But when you say residue flow, I mean, there is, I don't know, residue flow is whatever is left over. Okay, but if you're taking it back, that means you have to reroute it elsewhere. Anyway, so let's not continue the debate further. So if you have any questions, you can ask offline. Okay, so let's continue from where we left in the last lecture. So this was the updated flow. So we just took an augmenting path and took an edge. Sorry, to look at the edge with the least capacity in the residual network. That is least value of CF. Okay, so F is that value. So then we update the flow accordingly. Okay, so if the orientation of the edge is in accordance with the augmenting path, then you add the flow, add the value F. Okay, and if it is in the opposite direction, you take away the flow. Okay, so you reduce the value, you keep it as it otherwise. Okay, so in the last lecture we saw that this is feasible in the sense that the value, if it is increased, it is within the capacity. If it is decreased, greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so that way what we get is a feasible flow. And also in the last lecture we saw that this value of this flow is exactly F larger than the value of the original flow, which is F. Okay, so this capital F is the gain that we make. So since this is edge capacities, and in the residual network we remove edges with capacity 0, so this is a non-zero value. So this is a non-negative value. Remember that all capacities are non-negative. So this is going to be a value strictly greater than value of F. Okay. So in conclusion, what we have is if GF has an augmenting path, S to T path, augmenting, then there is a flow F prime such that F prime is greater or equal to, in fact, strictly greater than. Okay. So, okay. So now what if there is no such path? Okay. So this is what we are going to address today. So what if there is no such path? So if there is a path, we can come up with a better flow. If there is no path, so let's just look at all nodes that are reachable from S and all nodes that have a path to T. Okay. So SB set of all V there is an S to V path. T is the remaining. T is V minus S. Well, T, they may not have a path to T. There might also be vertices outside of it. So T will contain all of that. Okay. So then certainly S to T is an S to T cut. Is that true? So by definition, there is no further edge from here, right? If there were an edge, that the corresponding vertex, let's call it as say W, would have been in this set S, right? So there is no outgoing edge from S at all, clearly. So hence it has to be a cut. Is it a minimal cut? That we don't know. Is it a minimum weight cut? That we don't know. But it's a cut, right? So now, is it a cut in G as well? So it's a cut in GF.
Sir,
Yeah.
in the definition of capital S, we've written that there is an S to V path. So that path is in GF or G?
GF.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, see, in GF, it's not just a cut, it's just a component. I mean, there is no edge out of S at all. Okay. I mean, in fact, something more strong is true. Not just, I mean, the cut does not make sense because there is no, is such that there is no edge going out of S. Okay, by definition. Now the question is it a cut in G? Well, it is a cut if you take any set of vertices, right? And if you take edges going out of it, any set of vertices containing S, and you take any edge the set of edges going out, it's a cut. Of course, it's a cut. But what is that cut? So if you take any partition of the vertex, it's going to form a cut. Now it can be it will be an ST cut if S is in one part and T is in the other part. And it clearly T has to be in capital T, right? Because S is there is no path from S to T in GF. So that part is clear. So it is a cut. Now, but what is that cut? What is the value of that cut? Now let's try to understand the value or know the value of S. So value of cut S comma T in G. So let's look at the edges that we had in G. See, certainly there was a path, right? Otherwise, the flow does not make sense at all. Definition of flow, okay? And there could also be in, yeah. So these were the edges. Sorry, edges in G. There could have also been in GF. There could have also been edges backward, okay? Or in G itself, there would have been backward edges as well as forward edges. So now let's look at edges that were in G. Let's say UV. So consider any edge. UV such that U is in S, V is in T. Now, what can you say about the value of flow to this edge? So remember that this edge is not present in GF by the definition of set S. So this edge UV is not present in S in GF. So what does it mean? The edge is not present in GF. Okay, so we don't have the definition of that graph. Sorry.
So it's at its full capacity, the forward.
It's at full capacity. Yeah. So if you look at the definition, right? So I don't have the slide here. So how did we define the residual capacity? CF. So for edges which were in the original graph, the residual capacity is defined as capacity minus the flow assignment. The only reason this edge was not present in the graph GF is because the capacity matched the flow. Okay, so then it must be that CF UV is equal to CUV minus FUV is 0. That is CUV is equal to FUV. That is flow matches the capacity. Okay. Yeah. So now let's look at reverse edges. So remember that we must be having CUV is 0, right? But CUV could have also come. So if I take a pair where there was no edge, so there was a reverse edge. Let's just take this example itself. And so let's label this. Okay. So UVW, say I'll take as X. Okay. So WX is a backward edge. Now, if you go back and look at the definition of residue capacities, right? So we would have given the pair XW the capacity of FWX. Let's take this as FWX, right? Now, so consider any pair. So consider any pair. WX such that W is in T, X is in S, such that WX is in E. So then C of XW, CF of XW would have been F of WX. So that is another possibility. So we would have had this red edge causing an edge in the residual graph. Okay. So this would have caused, do I have any other color? Okay. So this would have caused an edge with the CF. So CF is equal to F of WX. But we know that such an edge does not exist, right, in GF. But since XW is not in EF, it must be that I'm sorry. It must be that CF fxw is 0, which must be equal to f of wx. So there are two possibilities, right? Having edge from S to T, capital S to capital T in GF. So one is the original graph itself had the edge. The other one is the graph had a reverse edge and you are adding the forward edge due to something. So it is due to the flow assignment being non-zero. But since this edge is not existing here by definition of SNT, it must be that the flow assignment to this edge, if at all it were there, it should be 0. Okay. So let's just gather what we have seen so far. So we have defined these sets. So we have started with the assumption that there is no S to T path. So we have defined these two sets. We just looked at the edges across. Okay. So one thing is, so what we have now is for every forward edge in the original graph, F would have assigned flow to the capacity. Okay. That is the first thing. Now second, for every reverse edge, F should have assigned 0 assignment. Otherwise, I would have had a forward edge in GF. So hence there would have been an S to T path. Okay. By definition, we know that there is no S to T path and hence S and T are disjoint here. Okay. So what does it mean? The flow assignment is such a way that all forward edges across capital S to capital T, they are full capacity and there is no backward flow. What does it mean? Can one of you summarize? What does it mean?
We cannot further increase the flow.
We cannot increase the flow, but what can you say about the value of the flow?
Equal to this cut value.
It's equal to this cut value. Okay. Because all forward edges are full capacity and all reverse backward edges of backward edges have no flow assignment at all. If they were having, then we would have had an edge from this set to this set, contradicting the definition. Okay. So what we have is, so therefore so all forward edges are full capacity in F and no backward edges. Edge is given a non-zero flow or assigned a non-zero flow. So therefore, value of the flow is equal to the capacity of the cut. And that's all we needed.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir,
Yeah.
like, can we go over this part? I'm not clear. No backward edge is given a non-zero flow.
Yeah. So see, this red edge is a backward edge in the original graph. Okay. Now when you define GF, right? So the residual flow value is equal to value of the flow to this edge. See, there are two ways an edge from, say, an element vertex in S to vertex in T would have had a non-zero capacity, right? One is we had that edge in the original graph and there was some residual flow. Whereas the other possibility is there was an edge in the opposite direction. So in this case, W2x. But then what was the capacity given? Capacity is the flow assignment to that edge. Okay. But we know that it has to be 0. The residual capacity must be 0. That means the flow assignment to that edge is 0. So, or in other words, in short, what it says is for all edges from capital S to capital T in the graph G, the assigned flow value should be equal to the capacity. And for all backward edges, that is edge from T to S, the flow assignment should be 0. If there was a non-zero assignment, then there would have been a path, or in the sense that it would have contradicted the definition of S, because W also would have been in S, capital S. So in other words, if you look at this subset, the outgoing flow is basically sum of the capacity of the edges which go out, and incoming flow is 0. So that means net outgoing flow from S should be equal to the sum of the capacities. That's a small exercise, of course. I haven't proven that part. Okay. So now I'll just leave this part as exercise. So exercise, show that F is equal to the outflow from S minus inflow into S. Okay, which is more technically equal to sum U in S, V not in S, F of UV minus sum V in S, U not in S, F of UV. Okay, so this is something I didn't prove. I'll leave it to you. It just follows from the flow conservation.
Does it say that at any given point of time?
Just a minute. I could not hear you properly. Can you repeat the question?
So does this statement say that at any given point of time the value assigned to the forward edge plus the value assigned to the backward edge is equal to the total capacity of the edge?
You mean a residual capacity?
Residual capacity plus the forward capacity should be equal to the total capacity of the edge. Is it like that? I'm a little confused, but
No. See, the point is, see, it could be that there is no forward edge at all, right? So it would have got residual capacity because of a backward edge, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is, yeah, what you said is not completely true. But for if there was a forward edge, then what you said is clear, correct? Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of you had. So was it Pranay who asked previously? Is it clear to you now?
Sir, can we go to the diagram?
Yes. Yeah.
We don't have any edges from U to V in this current, like we have edges, but hello?
Yeah.
This is the current GF graph, right? Residual graph.
No. So the blue edges are from G.
Okay.
So we are just looking at possibility of having an edge from S to T in GF. Okay. How would it have come? Okay. So suppose U to V, there was an edge in G. See, all these blue and red edges were from G. Okay. So now if U to V was an edge in the original graph, but it's no more an edge in GF. So why is that? It's because the flow would have met the capacity. Now, but there is also a possibility. So for some pair, so we just took it as XW, there would have been an edge here in S to T, due to the fact that there was an edge in G from W to X.
Sir, is it the other way? It's the other way, right? From X to W, and now it's W to X. Is it like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Did I flip? Okay. I'm sorry if I flipped. Okay. Yeah. So in the original graph, W to X. Yes. T to S.
Sir, like this red edge, is it in G or is it in GF?
Both red and blue are in G.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So this dotted line, right? Whatever this color is, so darker color, that would have been an edge in GF. But we know that that edge does not exist. So that means the flow assignment here must have been 0. That's only possibility. Okay, so let me just see if I have that slide here. Yeah, so this is yeah. So if you look at the residual capacity definition, right? So there are two ways capacity of an edge or a pair. In fact, I should not say edge. Capacity of a pair would have been non-zero. One is there is an edge in the corresponding direction u to v, but there was an edge. The other possibility is an edge from in the opposite direction v to u. Okay. In that case, the assignment is flow itself. In the first case, the assignment is capacity minus flow. So here, what we saw is for the first case, that is, if there was an edge from u to v, where u is in S and v is in T, then it has to be the capacity. The flow value must be the capacity, because we know that the residual capacity is 0. And the other case is if there was an edge from v to u, where v is in T and u is in S, then again we know that this must have been 0, the flow assignment, because this edge does not exist. There is no edge from u to v. Okay. So u to v, or in the notation that we have used the current slide, it's x to w.
Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
so either way, so what in effect means that the net outflow is which is equal to outflow assigned to blue edges minus flow assigned to red edges. But the red edges would have had 0 flow, and blue edges would have had flow equal to the capacity, which is nothing but the capacity of the cut. So capacity of the cut is sum of capacities of all blue edges. Okay, so this one small part I am leaving it to prove. Okay, this basically follows from the conservation law. Show that the value of flow, in fact, this holds for any cut, in fact. Okay, so or any subset of vertices S. So if you look at all outgoing edges, add those flows, and then subtract from it all in flow assignment to the incoming edges. That has to be equal to the value of flow, provided that S is a set which is reachable from S, the small s source. Okay. Yeah, so again, in a nutshell, so what did we argue? So we defined a residual network, which we called as GF. So we showed that if GF had any S to T path, then there is a larger flow value, I mean a flow with a larger value. And if there is no S to T path, the flow value is equal to the capacity of the cut. Okay, cut in the cut given by that residual graph. Okay, so I mean a cut given by taking set of all reachable from S, the source vertex. Now, so what does it mean in the end? So as long as there is a path, you can increase the flow, but the flow value, we have an upper bound, right? The lemma proved in the previous lecture or lecture before. Flow value is at most the capacity of any cut, right? Any flow value is upper bounded by any cut. So cut value is a finite value, right? So you can even take a minimum cut, minimum weight cut, or minimum capacity cut. So flow, which is a finite number. So there is only a finite iteration that is possible where you keep on augmenting. Okay. So the moment you stop, you know that from this part, you know that the value of flow is equal to value of cut. In fact, if you take minimum cut, then that's going to be the value of flow. Okay. So, or in other words, what does it mean? There is a flow which achieves the capacity of the cut, whose value is equal to the capacity of the cut. Okay. So therefore, okay, sorry, you don't have enough space. So therefore, there is a flow f hat such that value of f hat just by iterating this augmenting path argument, we immediately get that we can obtain a flow which achieves the capacity of the cut. That's exactly the statement that we wanted to prove. Okay, sorry, this here. Yeah, so the nice thing about this is the proof itself is algorithmic. Okay, so I believe this statement was known much before, though I mean algorithms people reinvented it, but at least I don't know. I mean, there was no stated proof of it. I mean, the earliest proof was basically due to Ford and Fulkerson. I think other people have slightly different proof, not exactly the augmenting path argument. But the nice thing about this is you actually have an algorithm. You immediately get an algorithm for computing max flow. Yeah, can one of you summarize the algorithm? This proof itself immediately gives you an algorithm. If nobody is coming forward, means I didn't convey the proof correctly.
Are we exhausting the augmented paths one by one, as you said?
That is all right. That's all. So you just keep on computing GF and compute augmenting path. As long as there is no augmenting path, keep on updating the flow. That's exactly what the proof does, is right, and it's pretty much the algorithm. So, okay, so I'll just, I hope I have some blank side somewhere. Okay, so I thought I had enough. Okay, so I'll use it from the end. So Ford-Fulkerson algorithm is the following. Okay. Okay, one, start with the feasible flow. It could be that all flow assignments are 0. Okay. So compute GF 3. If there is no augmenting path, GF output F. Else P be such a path F prime be the updated flow. Okay, 6. Repeat the above steps. Repeat 2 to 5 with GF prime. So keep on updating the flow, and then hence updating the residue network, and then repeat it until there is no path. Okay, if there is no augmenting path, output F. So, but we know that since the flow value increases by a non-zero value, and the maximum flow value is a finite number, this will run for finite number of steps. Okay. Yeah. So the only part is the complexity of the algorithm. How long will it run? So the whole area of network flows basically is about. So just like Ford's generic algorithm, right? There again, it's not augmenting. I mean, it's basically iteratively building a path or whatever, walk. Okay. But so in fact, almost all of the shortest path algorithms is a instantiation of Ford's algorithm. It could be greedy version, or it could be dynamic programming version, or it could be something else. So similarly here, almost all flow algorithms are basically specializations of this. Okay. So now the trick here is, how do we choose this path? What path you're going to take? So this algorithm does not specify. So the complexity can be really, really bad. Okay. So the worst case complexity, let me see if I have noted it down. So the worst case complexity is okay, I haven't here. So just give me a second. I'll just show you the complexities. Okay. Yeah. So this is something I took from Erickson's book. So these are the kind of algorithms for network flows. Okay. So there are lots of algorithms. Basically, like I said, essentially about choosing the augmentation path and so on. So the earliest one is due to, I think, Edmond and Karp, where they choose either the shortest path, that is shortest with respect to number of edges, or fattest, that is path with the highest capacity. Okay, so that is the minimum capacity, residual capacity should be the maximum. Okay, along the path should be the maximum possible. So there are various algorithms here. So I can, unfortunately, can't use the pointer here. So yeah, so these are the algorithms, summary of complexities. Okay, so see, because given the importance of network flows, till date there are studies. Okay, so there are lots of, almost every other day there will be person coming up with an implementation of a flow algorithm, or a faster flow algorithm in some cases, and so on, or from special cases. Okay, so I will not really go into any of this. I will not really detail. So even here, the algorithm that I have presented, which is essentially the proof that we have done, written in an algorithmic fashion, the complexity is non-trivial. As far as I know, I think it is v square into n square into m is what I believe. Okay, so you'll have to see what is the minimum value that raises, whatever, irrespective of the path that you have chosen. Okay, so that requires an argument. I will not really go into that, but in essence, what it says is just like shortest paths, a generic algorithm of the proof immediately gives us a generic algorithm. And almost all of the algorithms essentially have this following flavor. I mean, it's about the choice P that you make. Okay. So I'll conclude this part with just one example application. Which is kind of, I would say, one of the fundamental applications. Okay. So here we'll consider a simple case of bipartite matching. So in general, matching theory and the network flow theory have close, very close connections. This notion of augmenting path, they also are useful in matching theory and in fact matching algorithms. So the Ford Fulkerson idea of obtaining residual network and then looking for augmenting paths, right? It's essentially like I would say it's essential part of the area of matchings. Okay. So I'll just consider the special case of matchings. I hope all of you have heard of the matching problem. I'll just define it for you once again, but for bipartite graphs here. Okay. So let's say we have a bipartite graph. So there are two parts. U, V consists of the vertex set. That is U union V is a vertex set. E is an edge set. So edge should be such a way that one endpoint is in U and the other endpoint is in V. Okay. Now a matching in G, well, matching can also be defined for an arbitrary graph, is a subset of edges such that no two edges share an endpoint or have a common endpoint. Okay. So for example, if you take this as a bipartite graph, so let's take this as U and this as V. Now all this green ticked edges, right? They form a matching 2, 3, 4, 5. So it happens that almost not almost all vertices here are matched except this vertex. Everyone else is matched here. Okay. So now the general question, in fact, this definition can be extended to arbitrary graphs, but to see the application of network flows, it's easier with the bipartite graphs. Okay. So matching is well defined for non-bipartite graphs and so on. Some of you might have already seen, if some of you are doing this advanced graph algorithms course, you'd have already seen a lot of applications of matching, or in fact algorithms for matchings and so on. So there are lots of applications of this. Almost everywhere it comes. Okay, so for example, matchings are one useful thing in one of the systems that are implemented in our institute. It's called Students Elective Allocation Tool. Okay, so they basically students give preferences of their electives, particularly for BTech undergrad students, not for master students. Masters are allowed to take any elective that they like. Then because there will be capacity constraints for each class or each course, then there is an allocation. Okay, so this can be viewed as a matching problem. You match a student with the course. So there are lots of such useful applications of the matching problem. So now the problem here is, given a bipartite graph, compute a matching which is the maximum in size. Okay, so which contains the maximum number of edges. In this case, of course, maximum possible itself is 5 because one of the sides has only 5 vertices, and in fact this green ticked edges, they in fact give us a maximum matching. Now I had mentioned, but I didn't really go over it, nor I gave it as an exercise, was if you consider a set of all matchings in a graph that does not form a matroid, that immediately tells us greedy algorithm fails. Okay. But there is a simple reformulation of the matching problem in terms of flow. Okay, so this picture kind of explains it. This is taken from Jeff Erickson's book. Suppose this is the graph whose matching is what we want to compute. Okay, so what you do is you give orientation to edges. Okay, so let's assume that, so this is, let's say this is U and this is V. Let's put orientation from U to V. Okay, orientation is U to V. And what we do is we add a new source vertex and terminal vertex. Every vertex in U, we have an edge from S. For every vertex in V, we have an edge from V to T. Okay, so this is how the network will look like. So S to U and then U to V, the original graph, but oriented from U to V, and then V to T. We set the capacity as 1 for every edge. So the capacity is going to be 1. So since the capacity is 1, it's not difficult to see that if you take any flow, okay, any feasible flow, in fact, it defines a matching, right? Because there can be at most one edge going out of this, out of a vertex here, and similarly at most one edge coming inside, right? Because the capacity is going to be 1. You can't exceed the capacity, so no two edges can come into a vertex in V. Similarly, no two edges can go out of a vertex. So in other words, you can see that as a matching. And similarly, any matching, you can see it as a corresponding to a feasible flow. All you do is for the corresponding endpoints, put an edge to S and add the flow value as 1. Similarly, all the corresponding endpoints, put an edge to T and the corresponding flow value being 1. So there is in fact a 1-1 correspondence between flow assignments and matchings. Okay, flow assignment in this new graph, let's call it as say G prime. This is G. So 1-1 correspondence, that is bijective correspondence between matchings in G and flow, feasible flow in G prime. Okay. So in other words, to solve the maximum matching problem, all you need to do is compute max flow in this graph. Okay. So this is one of the classical examples of applications of network flow. So if you look at Erickson's book or even I think CLRS book, they will have a lot of such applications. In fact, Ericsson has a lot of applications. Okay. So I'll just stop with this. I will not really give rigorous proof of this and so on. So this is just for you to know that okay, there are applications. And in the matching literature too, you see this augmenting path terminology, which is originally owing to network flow. I would say until network flow algorithms came, and people didn't even believe that okay, there is an efficient polynomial time algorithm for matchings. Okay, let alone, I mean, not just so in general, right? The matching problem over graphs or even bipartite graphs, people didn't believe. Okay, it was due to network flow we got first polynomial time algorithm. And till date, all matching algorithms, in fact, will use similar pattern. Okay, so there will be notion of augmenting paths and so on. They vary based on the applications, kind of matchings that people study and so on. Okay, not exactly augmenting path in the residual network, but yeah, there is a notion of augmenting path. So with this, I will stop. I will not discuss any further applications. Yeah, I think yeah, as usual, I like exhausted my time. So maybe I'll take questions. So Sinus, you can stop the recording. Yeah.
Sir, in the matching problem, from S to the vertices